We're still waiting for Zaina Mahana and Nader Talabzada to join us in Tehran, but we are convening here today with J. Michael Springmann, Phil Giraldi, Dr. Kevin Barrett, and myself, Sander Hicks, because we are concerned about FBI harassment of United States citizens who are planning to travel to Beirut to attend the international conference really about peace and truth. It's called New Horizon. It's convened by the Iranians. They're our friends. Iranian filmmaker Nader Talabzada and his wife Zaina Mahana. Their conference has recently been sanctioned by US Treasury. So we've been trying to use Zoom conference to have international conferences for transparency and peace and democracy and really kind of represent the best of American values. The First Amendment protects our right to associate with whomever we want and speak with whomever we want and speak about whatever we want to speak about, be it domination, imperialism, Zionism. I'll open it up and say, guys, I've been going through a lot of stress at the Quaker meeting because some of the people on the Peace and Social Justice Committee feel that I shouldn't identify as an anti-Zionist. They say that Zionism has many different meanings and it's a triggering word. If I use the phrase 5 dancing Israelis, that's triggering for them. It's a trope that they don't want to hear, and they're just kind of, so what would you say? I mean, but don't just condemn it. Try to connect to them as spiritual, political thinkers. Kevin, what would you say to this?
Well, I don't know. I just had an interesting interfaith dialogue with a Jewish religious guy named David. And I'm sorry about that background noise. That's my roof being worked on in the distance.
Yeah.
And you know, I really liked him and actually agreed with him about just about everything. That was very interesting. He's pretty much anti-Zionist himself, although he's very low-key about it. But he does relate to the Neturei Karta position that Judaism is diametrically opposed to Zionism. And so I would start the conversation by saying, why is it that the religion of Judaism somehow got hijacked, and today we have this movement that's committing genocide in Palestine? It's run by people who don't believe in God, but they still believe that God gave them the Holy Land thousands of years ago. And so there's a problem with this, the whole notion of Zionism, and we should be able to talk about it, and people with different perspectives on it should be able to talk about it.
Guys, I'm the host of this call, and I just want to let you know I'm monitoring who's joining. I believe Scott Bennett just joined. We also had somebody under the identification of National Security Agency just join the call.
That's because that's the name of my phone, so I apologize.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Scott Ricard.
Thank you for having me.
Good. I'm glad you're able to join us. You really freaked me out there. I was like, they wouldn't identify themselves as such, would they? So tell us, why is your phone called National Security Agency?
Well, because when it broadcasts Wi-Fi as a Wi-Fi point, I want to make it absolutely clear that it's wide open.
Great. Exactly. My uncle Lee, who's not really a biological uncle, Lee Bettis, lifelong veteran of the CIA, somebody I grew up with in the DC suburbs, he used to say, when I tried to talk to him about, who killed JFK or 9/11 on the phone, he would always say, listen, it's all an open line.
Yeah. Everyone's, there's a great amount of deniability on the phone or near a phone. But if you get out in areas that don't have any type of potential communication, the stories become quite more detailed.
Yeah. So Scott, tell us about your recent experience with FBI. They contacted you?
Yeah, they were pretty friendly and easygoing about it. They came last Thursday, last week, while I was at work, and then left a business card. I called, left a message, and then after I had left a message, the guy called back, wanted to schedule a time, scheduled for Monday. And then they showed up, a 39-year-old Air Force OSI retiree, maybe not retiree, but only about 39 years old, but perhaps military retiree. And then a Puerto Rican girl probably in her mid-30s as well. And interestingly enough, you know, I said, listen, hey, you know, I'd like to record the conversation. They obviously said no. And I said, at the same time, you know, if there's anything, you know, that comes up, I'll probably stop the conversation because I'll be honest with you, I don't want any subjective reporting about what it is you're going to gather here today. I'd like to know what kind of evidence you're looking to gather before I, you know, start asking and answering any questions. And they basically came right out and said they've got a list of individuals that were invited or attended the Horizons conference in
New Horizon, yeah.
A New Horizons conference in Iran or elsewhere associated with it. And they were interested in anybody that was attending that because that has been now sanctioned as being associated with IGRC. And obviously they've been called out as terrorists for the entire elite forces for Iran. So, you know,
right. And of
basically
course,
being affiliated with a terrorist organization, you know, given that long shot. So,
right. And as a lot of people on this call will tell you, that is a far-fetched allegation. It's not proven. There is no association between the IRGC and the New Horizon conference. The conference is being sponsored by religious groups, not the IRGC.
Yeah, whether there's any connection or not is irrelevant to me. I told him straight up. I said, listen, I asked him, I said, do you realize where these sanctions are coming from? And I said, do you realize that, you know, they didn't even know who Steve Mnuchin was. And I said, you know, you guys ought to do your homework. I said, you know, I said, how long have you been on this particular task? And the guy said, really only 2 weeks. He said, frankly, he didn't know very much about Iran. He'd only spent most of his time in AFRICOM, basically working in Air Force OSI in the African arena. I told him, I said, you know, it's pretty sad. I said, you know, the brown shirts and the SS, you know, they were following orders as well. I said, you might want to take a closer look at the people running the Treasury Department and the people that are actually managing these sanctions, specifically the one, someone in one of the threads, or I can't remember where I read it, but someone also brought up Sigal in the Treasury Department. They're filing some sort of legal.
That's right. I told you that, Scott. That's right. And he's on the, that gentleman is on the call here, J. Michael Springmann, former State Department diplomat, author of Visas for Al-Qaeda. And he did file an Inspector General report against Sigal Pearl Mandelker. So let's hear from Mr. Springmann. You filed an Inspector General complaint, right?
Wait a minute. Please, can we go back? I mean, I'm confused about whether the FBI NICs were talking about Beirut coming up or about a trip to Iran, because there's a major substantive difference.
So anybody
who's of Beirut or of Iran?
Anyone who's basically planning to go or has gone in the past is what they wanted to know about.
But again, is this Iran or Beirut?
Yeah, the Iranian New Horizons conference.
Yeah, but their conference that's coming up is scheduled for Beirut in September, and nothing is scheduled for Iran.
Exactly. It doesn't matter. It's just association with the group itself. Is what the way they described it.
No,
right.
That's
consistent with what I found too. The U.S. Treasury doesn't care where it is; it's who it is.
Yes.
So great. Michael, give us a quick summary of your Inspector General complaint against Sigal Pearl Mandelker. I think she's the director of the OFAC inside U.S. Treasury.
She's the Undersecretary of the Treasury for Terrorism and Financial Intelligence. And I have been going back and forth with various people about her activities. And I had written an article for this journalist's website that is not yet up and running. And she gave me permission to publish the thing elsewhere. And I thought I would get some information, hopefully from Scott. And he's given us, I guess, what I wanted so far. And I said in the complaint on their website, which unfortunately does not give me a copy of what I wrote, I said that this Mandelker woman is most likely an Israeli agent. She was born in Israel, was raised in Israel, and somehow came to the United States, and worked her way through various positions and ended up as Undersecretary of the Treasury. And she is the driving force behind sanctions against the New Horizon Conference. And I said that she had violated the laws of the United States by representing Israeli interests, not American ones, and that these sanctions were based on lies. She claimed that the program was anti-Semitic, and I said, well, I sat next to an Arab for 2 days, and as far as I know, she was a Semite. They had Rabbi David Weiss from New York City, who was also a Semite, and Miko Peled was attending as well. And they had politicians and journalists from Europe and elsewhere attending the thing. And nobody spoke about anti-Semitism, and nobody came to me and said, we want to recruit you for the Iranian intelligence services. So I said that this whole thing is basically a whole pack of lies, and she based her sanctions and American foreign policy on that, and that I wanted her investigated. And I said, as far as I know, she could well be an Israeli citizen. I wanted documents showing that she has formally renounced her Israeli citizenship in front of an Israeli government official.
Right, right. One of the things that I was saying earlier this week is that the dual citizenship question, a lot of people get so obsessed with it, they think it's exclusive to Israel and US, but it's not. There's actually, dual citizenship is actually much more common than some of us tend to believe. So dual citizenship is not really all that uncommon, but in the case of the 9/11 cover-up or the deep state in the US, there does seem to be a bias in favor of Israel, the special relationship. Just recently, Congress passed some legislation. It was like a non-binding resolution, but it denounced BDS. So this is something that's very alarming. Even locally here in New York City, I got an email from Jewish Voices for Peace, and they said, contact your congresswoman. You can see if they voted yes, and my congresswoman did vote yes in favor of this condemnation of BDS. So I think this is a lot's happening in the the AIPAC conference just happened, and six key presidential candidates did not attend the AIPAC conference this year. Al Jazeera just did a nice report about that and saying that the AIPAC seems to be losing influence significantly.
Sander, let me break in. This is Scott Bennett. I kind of want to hear more about the threats to arrest people who attend this conference. What exactly precisely they said to Scott Ricard regarding arresting anyone or taking action against anyone that did this, because my entire reaction has been, we need to go into court and file an action. I'll do it alone if I have to, but I think a group one would be more powerful. But I think we can't afford to be quiet and wait a few days before, and then someone shows up and says, we'll arrest you if you go. I think we need to go to court and file some sort of an action that, like Michael Springmann has said, this is a violation of our constitutional rights to speak, our right to religious freedom, because we want to participate in a religious pilgrimage to the Beirut shrine that you referenced before, and our work as journalists. This is a research project. This is an opportunity to write stories about this and other things. So they're violating a variety of our constitutional rights, and that needs to be met in court. And what they said to Scott with regards to arresting people and all that, I'd like to hear a little bit more about that, Scott.
Great.
Yeah, sure. So the real crux of it was, if you are going to participate in these events, and at this time when there are sanctions on this particular group, any type of funds that you receive, whether it be for airfare or food or lodging or any of those types of things, are clear violations and would be considered a point at which you could be arrested because you're in clear violation of receiving those funds from that group. So that's that was the real, because I tried to get explicit detail on what it is. Why would you arrest me? What exactly would I have to do? And so that they gave me that information.
Great.
So
guys,
obviously paid for it for yourself, did not receive any funds, I think that you would be okay.
Yeah, yeah. We've been talking about the different ways to get around some of these legal concerns. I think Scott's point is really good. I think we have the beginnings here of some kind of class action suit on a nationwide phalanx of activists such as ourselves, from Florida to California to New York and everywhere, and DC and points in between, Wisconsin. You know, that's what we've got on the call right now. We've got people all across the country, former intelligence, former DoD, former State Department. So I think some kind of preemptive legal action would assert First Amendment rights.
Well, let me hop in here if I could, if you don't mind me breaking in.
Sure.
Earlier this year, I spoke a number of times with an attorney recommended to me as being an expert on sanctions. And he told me that he charges anywhere from $100,000 to $300,000 a case to deal with people who have been sanctioned. And he said he generally loses. Prior to the Trump administration, he would win some of these cases. Now he doesn't win them hardly at all. He added that you could go against the Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, and attack them and demand their documents and say this was done improperly, that there was no right to be heard, there was no proper notice, etc. Or you could go to federal court and get the thing bounced back to OFAC. And of course, OFAC would say, well, we have sources and methods, and we are going to do as we please. And it's like the Freedom of Information Act. They're not going to give anything up that they don't want to do. So I think that any kind of class action suit, unless you have a lot of money and a lot of legal power behind it, is not going to get anywhere.
Yeah, I think your best bet would probably be the ACLU if you can find a legitimate, I guess, regional or even DC-based organization. You know, the ACLU is run by some right-wing Republicans here in Tampa. I would never approach them, but they certainly wouldn't support this. They would be all on board with Steve Mnuchin's activities. So, and interestingly enough, you mentioned that organization. I've read, I don't know this firsthand, but I've read that there have been over a dozen individuals who have quit the Treasury Department's sanctioning division, most recently because of the Sigal's, I guess, methods in which she manages the organization. So it's an organization that's definitely got some individuals that work there that are probably happy to speak out. So I would seek those individuals out, because I guarantee they're very disgruntled with what's happening there.
Oh, that's very interesting, Scott. We should follow up on that. I'd love to help you do the research and the groundwork and dig that out. I've got a background as an investigative reporter, and I love inside sources. I love whistleblower sources. I've done books about 9/11 whistleblowers.
But Treasury doesn't have an online phone directory anymore.
Well, we could use social media. I'm actually moving to DC pretty soon, the DC suburbs of Virginia, to take care of my aging parents. So that'll be, I'll be there with, Michael Maloof is down there. Mr. Springmann is down there in that area. My friend Lawrence O'Donnell, the former chief of staff of Colin Powell, who's now a whistleblower and an outspoken critic of Zionism and the war machine. He's down in that area, so that'll be.
There's a guy that I know seems to know everybody in DC. A guy named Hugh Grindstaff. He's an interesting character. He's always been able to turn over some stones for me.
Great. And Scott, are you planning to go to Beirut in September?
No, I can't. I'm under investigation for a top secret clearance right now, so I'd rather not exacerbate the sore. So. I've already got enough. I'm sure they got enough open wounds to scratch at right now.
I see. Well, what can you tell us about why are you trying to get a clearance for top secret security?
It opens a lot more doors. You can fight better from the inside than you can the out. I was a Republican delegate, and I can tell you that I was able to see in a lot more clearly once as a delegate in the party. So certainly, I'm not, if you can't beat them, join them. I'm, if you can't beat them, join them and figure out what the fuck they're doing.
But what triggered the FBI or OSI investigation of you, since you hadn't been to Iran and weren't going to Iran?
It's just because I'm on the list and I get a lot of communications, and obviously they're monitoring everything. I've been asked to go, to each event, and I have, wanted to go, but certainly have not made the effort to go. It does take some effort, obviously. At the same time, I was going through this investigation has been going on since April of last year. It's in adjudication right now, because I'm sure it wasn't a very easy thing for them to accomplish, given the nature of our, I'll say dissent to some activities at our government. But I always contend that as an American, we do have the right to assemble and request that our government, correct its wrongdoings, and that's all I've ever asked. So
Yeah.
Well, let me say one thing real quick. One thing that they did, I think everybody knows this. They took, when they grabbed Marzia Hashimi and kidnapped her to Washington, D.C., the Press TV anchor woman, they put a picture down in front of her that they took from my website, because it was my picture of Mike Maloof, myself, and Marzia taking a photo in the Tehran hotel. So they put that in front of her.
In fact, that's the same thing. They showed all the pictures of individuals during the interview, asking if I recognize them, members of the New Horizons conference. And interestingly enough, Marzia was on there as well. And I said, realize that you guys have held her captive illegally in the country for 2 weeks, and she's obviously a participant, and she's a U.S. citizen and an Iranian citizen. So I think there's some lines being crossed here. Certainly she didn't do anything wrong because she was released. But, I said, you really need to spend your time as agents of a security force for the United States investigating the backgrounds of unfortunately, the Treasury Department, what the true initiatives are behind that. Hey, listen, I got to run because I have a 12:30 I got to run into. I have had a conversation with you in a Florida Department of Transportation vehicle. This was not done on work time. Just so you know, I know it's being heavily monitored because these communications are highly suspected.
Well, yeah, everybody loves to monitor Americans doing American things like speaking freely about truth and peace. So thank you for joining us. You're a great American.
I'm glad I could join. Sorry, I couldn't only stay about a half hour.
Good luck with your top secret security clearance. And
you say I can imagine it's slim and none.
God bless you.
Thank
you. Cheers.
Okay. Good, guys. And I am trying to get us trying to get Zaina and Nader on the line as well. And sorry that hasn't happened yet. It's 9 p.m. in Tehran now. So, but I am recording this and I'll get them the footage. So, but one thing I wanted to do is respond back to Scott Bennett and say that I have been reaching out to attorneys. I tried to get some attorneys on this call. I had a conversation with David Meiswinkle, who is the president of the 9/11, the lawyers for 9/11 inquiry. Yeah. And he was interested in possibly participating. I also reached out to a couple of other members of that group and just let them know what was going on here. And, it's not just Scott Ricard who's been visited by FBI. Michael Maloof, J. Michael Springmann himself have been visited by FBI. Scott, you haven't yet. Is that right?
That's right. No one has visited me or called me or knocked on my door. I felt left out of the party.
Bad. Don't feel insulted. I know it's like, what am I, chopped liver?
That's discrimination.
Yeah, you don't like Scotsmen? You don't like kicks in the balls? Because I'll tell you, those bastards come at me, I'm going to go right down and say, let's have a conversation and mark this all name my congressman's office. And I think that's an important thing, because then you put him you put your member on the hook too. And I have no problem hanging on them as much as I possibly can. I'm in agreement with Ricard, but I think this is an opportunity when they touch you, it's like Brer Rabbit. We really can't let go of them until we give them what we mandate that they report to the President of the United States directly. I'm convinced all of this is being back-channeled and squirreled away, and he's getting half-truths, and he's being denied real intelligence. This is an opportunity to really expose a lot of these people in their their scams. They did the same thing to James and Joanne Moriarty. They sent 2 FBI agents down there about 3 months ago to talk to them about Jerome Corsi and the whole Mueller report stuff. And they packed him with a lot of material. He didn't do anything. But I think this is an opportunity to go on the offensive, and we really need to.
Yeah, guys, just letting you know in Zoom etiquette, sometimes it's good if you have any background noise or little beeps, it's good to maybe mute your audio. It's not that I'm censoring you. You can always unmute it yourself. So I'm just going to maybe unmute anybody that's got background noise. But Scott, that's really good to hear. I also wanted to share that I agree with you with the Brer Rabbit thing. It's good to be a human being and relate to FBI agents as human beings and say, you didn't join the Federal Bureau of Investigation to harass United States patriots and peace activists. You joined because you're obviously out to go after the bad guys, the big bad guys. And we believe that the Palestinians have human rights that have been ignored by the whole Wall Street, war machine, Zionism, Saudi Arabian, Israeli, CIA, US Treasury nexus. And I just want to share with you that I had this great experience talking to an FBI agent in Shreveport, Louisiana, when I was investigating the harassment and murder of a 9/11 whistleblower named Dr. David Graham. He was a US veteran, winner of the Bronze Star for his service in Vietnam. And the FBI participated in a deep state killing of this guy because he saw the proximity of the so-called 19 hijackers to US military at Shreveport, Barksdale Air Force Base. And it was, I thought the FBI was going to be cool and, you know, like on television, right? Like on Twin Peaks or, you know, the X-Files, you know, FBI is so cool, right? But in reality, they're human beings who have emotions, and they had just killed this guy about a year ago. And this guy, Special Agent Steve Hayes, was almost like melting with rage and guilt and tremorous. He was literally vibrating with, you know, telling me these half-truths and speaking out of both sides of his face. And it was actually quite compelling. It was great evidence that something was rotten down in Shreveport.
Well, I tell you, I don't want to give you all legal advice, but in my experience dealing with the FBI with some clients and talking to attorneys who make a profession of criminal defense dealing with the FBI, the less you say, the better. They will talk and talk and have you talk and talk, and eventually they'll catch you in a slip-up or a mistake and pounce on you saying, you're lying to the FBI, that's a federal crime, we're going to come down on you with everything we possibly can. So I would not do that. I would not be open and above board. The best thing you would say, no, thank you. And if you really want to do it, I'll get an attorney and from the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, and we'll sit down and have a discussion if you tell us what you want to know.
Yeah, I respect your opinion.
Go on fishing expeditions.
No, I respect that opinion. You remind me of certain radicals called Crime Think, Michael, who say, don't talk to the FBI if they harass you. My perspective has always been, well, if I'm doing journalism and if I'm investigating the murder of Dr. David Graham and the FBI is involved, then I will walk into the FBI office and get them to talk to me. So it's kind of like, sure, you have every right not to speak to the FBI, especially without the presence of an attorney. You can just say, sorry, guys, I'd like to make sure I have my attorney here so I don't mess up or misspeak. But in my case, I went in with a fellow journalist named Jordan, old friend of mine. He was a witness to the fact that there was something extremely off. And so having the audacity to kind of, you know, we were also doing it in a prayerful frame of mind too. I know not everybody relates to this, but like we actually prayed before we went in, you know, and prayed for guidance. And it was a total coincidence and unlikely that the FBI agent that we wanted to speak with that day in the Shreveport FBI office would actually be there, would actually like suddenly come to the window. It was a complete, unlikely, unreasonable thing to have happen, but it might have had, there might have been some sort of divine intervention there, if you'll indulge the supposition. Okay,
Well, I want to get Phil's opinion on some of this too. I talked with Mike Maloof a little bit, and we're all kind of in the same sheet of music. But Phil, is there anything jumping out at you that we should begin to think about doing, or we should stay away from, or what would your advice be on all of this? Can't hear you, pal. You're muted.
All right, hold on. I'll unmute you. Okay.
Oh, okay. All right. You hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
good.
Okay. I've lost the picture somehow too. So anyway, yeah, I think we're going, before we run out of time, I think we have a short-term problem, we have a long-term problem. And we shouldn't be talking about our personal histories. And so, I mean, I see the FBI every 6 months or so. And quite honestly, I think the advice not to cooperate with them is the best advice to go with. But the short-term problem is, what are we going to do about Beirut? My problem with going through the legal channels and filing a suit or something like this, it's going to take a lot longer than September. And I think that's fine if that's what we want to work with as a long-term solution, although I think the probability is it won't go anywhere. But I think in the short term, we have to figure out what are our tactics, what are our strategies for Beirut. Are we going to go to Beirut? Are we going to speak there? What do we think the consequences might be? How can we mitigate the consequences? I think that's what we should be focusing on.
You're right. You're right. I'm open to hearing solutions about that. I personally think that it's an opportunity for civil disobedience in the tradition of Thoreau and Martin Luther King and others, to say that we realize that this is technically breaking the law, but there's a higher law that we're following. What do other people think?
Well, in my view, I checked out the penalties for participating in something that's been sanctioned, and the civil penalties start at $55,000. I did not see anything on what the criminal penalties might be. I filed months ago a application for a license to attend the conference in Beirut, and have yet to hear anything back from the Office of Foreign Assets Control. So I think that they're going to basically ignore you because Mandelker and her masters in Israel have told her what to do and how to do it, and we're wasting our time. Since this office was set up under the second Bush administration, it's been crewed by Zionists, and with Mandelker, this is the first time we have somebody with direct ties to Israel. Phil Giraldi wrote about this in the If Americans Knew website, and said he thought she was still an Israeli. I sent an email to the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C., asking if becoming an American citizen would disturb your Israeli citizenship, and have yet to hear back after several months. So I think that we're going to need a lot of political power to get anything done with these people. And we're going to need a change of administration to do it, I think.
The other thing was Senator Rand Paul being tapped by Trump to go over and negotiate or talk or open up discussions with Iran. I don't know if he's gone over yet or he's in the planning, but that's someone that we should tap into directly and say, you've been tapped to go over to Iran. These are men who've already gone over and have been invited to go over to Beirut. And this is a key organization with people that can be very influential in advancing peace policy and things like that. So perhaps a conference call with Rand Paul's office might be part of the strategic outreach.
Right. Good. We got news from you. Nader Talibzadeh's office is in touch with us here. They're texting me via Skype, and they're saying they're going to be ready in 5 minutes. So I guess maybe there's a little bit of a misunderstanding about time zones, but I really tried to coordinate with using Eastern Standard Time and Tehran time, but I just got a text from Nader's assistant, and they will be getting set up. So everything we've said thus far is good. We'll just, this is like our dress rehearsal, I guess. So Rand Paul was tasked to be like an emissary? Yeah.
If anybody wants to add to that, but I think that's something we should consider.
It has not been confirmed yet. I'm kind of in touch with people that are around Rand Paul, And it certainly, I have heard that it certainly has been under serious discussion between him and Trump. And I think it's a very good idea to get in touch with his office if it proceeds beyond this point. I think that can be arranged.
Phil, on a side note, there was controversy between him and John. There was controversy about Rand Paul opposing something about the 9/11 Victims Compensation Fund. Is that related to this at all?
No, it's not. It's a separate issue. He's being the libertarian budget watcher. He's concerned about inflation or the increasing number of bills that have flexible financial aspects to them, and he opposed it on those grounds.
Okay, great. Thank you for indulging me. The Iranians say they'll be ready in about 5 minutes.
Phil, do you want to take lead and contact Rand Paul's office, chief of staff, and see about setting up a conference call, or do you want someone else to do that?
I could do it.
Okay.
I'm going to be seeing Ron Paul in about 2 weeks.
Okay.
And can kind of manipulate it through him. Sure.
I think that would be a good thing.
Good. For my part, I've been considering reaching out to my colleagues, Rashida Tlaib, Representative Tlaib, and Representative Ilhan Omar, who I believe might be sympathetic to our cause, since they're both inside my political tendency and they're also Muslim. And, so yeah, that's I mentioned this earlier, I'll mention it again, but I highly recommend on YouTube watching the Al Jazeera documentary about the waning influence of AIPAC. And I think that's it should be part of our message, that there is definitely a political shift going around here, and that it's a cause for hope.
Well, the other thing I want to throw at Michael Springmann, if we haven't been served the communication as they've done with Scott Ricard, there's a kind of a fuzzy area there that, we haven't been told that we can't go, but I don't know if they would say it doesn't matter. The law, ignorance of the law is no defense. There's a very real possibility and I've been through this. They've thrown me in prison for 2.5 years for allegedly filling out a paperwork form incorrectly and then putting a gun enhancement on there. So I effectively was in jail for 2.5 years for something that was 0 to 6 months in probation, but they got away with it. And granted, it's still in the appeal process, but they could pull something. And I don't think any of us want to be locked in jail for 2 years waiting for a hearing date. And they can do that. They can throw you in jail and let you sit there until they're ready to pull it to court. And I'm wondering, one of the things we should consider is, the objective is to win the war, not the battle. Yes, we all want to go. Yes, we want to be peace advocates. Yes, we want to be champions. But do we win the war if we use their threats and all of that to our advantage somehow, to say they're not letting us go or else they are going to arrest us upon return? If it's a foregone conclusion that it's 100% probable they're going to arrest all of us and throw us in jail, I'm not sure if we win the war by allowing that to happen, or if we win the war by not going and using that as a leverage for other political attacks or just generating energy, publicity, or other things. And I'll defer to the floor if anyone wants to comment and think about that.
Well, the thing of it is, you won't get any publicity. They just had a big deal here in Washington, D.C. about Tacoma Park, a suburb, wanting to put on a film called The Occupation of the American Mind, which goes into some detail about Zionist control of the American news media. And they had a report on it, and they didn't have anybody speaking on behalf of the film, on behalf of opposition to Zionism. They just had somebody from the Anti-Defamation League go on and on and on about how this was all anti-Semitic and shouldn't be shown whatsoever. So, you're not going to get the broadcast media behind you because the mainstream media is controlled.
As somebody who's worked in journalism off and on throughout my life, I would say that there is certainly a news hook here for mainstream journalism now. And I got Caleb Mopin from RT semi-interested in this story when I told him that we were doing this today, and he's been getting my messages. But the news hook right now is that FBI has been harassing US citizens. And Michael, you just reminded me, it's not just Scott Ricard, it's also yourself, and it's also Michael Maloof, and it seems to be programmatic that they're, so you're right, we don't have any publicity now, and it's unlikely that we will get positive publicity from mainstream media, but there's Veterans Today, there's RT, there's other outlets, and I personally have my own news website now, NewYorkMegaphone.com. I'd like to do a story on this, and I'm working on it. Like I said, I take hope in the fact that Al Jazeera is and Al Jazeera hasn't been the most radical 9/11 truth supporting, peace supporting outlet, but they are reporting in kind of a mainstream, Arabic, English language audience way that something is certainly changing. We have two elected, articulate members of Congress who happen to be female and happen to be Muslim. That's a radical shift. Just the fact that Representative Ilhan Omar could even say that AIPAC is powerful and then be pounced upon for saying it is newsworthy.
Let me just share, Sander, too, though. As much as Ilhan Omar may be right about the AIPAC and the Benjamins and dollars and all that stuff, she, on my side of a more conservative leaning, she throws all that out the window when she allows herself or gives the impression of going on this anti-white male tirade, or at least the perception of that, because instantly everything good she was saying, and this isn't me, I mean, I've talked with Jim Fetzer, him and I do a show every Monday, and Jim Fetzer is a very strong supporter of Ilhan Omar on that level alone. However, when they start going on this anti-white male, racism rant and stuff like that, they burn up that political capital and begin to seemingly brand themselves on a revolutionary side, on a rabid socialist side, on a shrill sort of aggression. So
yeah. Okay, hold on a second. Let's slow down. When you say anti-white male, what specifically are you citing?
Well, anything that starts saying America is a racist country, okay? Instantly, you're saying everybody who's not black or brown or independent, in between, is a racist. That's the feeling. And I don't want to go too far in a big political discussion. I'm happy to, but I don't want to waste people's time. But that's the impression that I get is America. When you say America is a racist country, or you've got racist policies at the border, or people are drinking out of toilets, or all this stuff, it's pointing indirectly to all you white people are doing this. I heard this from Alex Padilla here in Walnut Creek, California. The Attorney General stand up and say all voter suppression is rooted in white racism. So there's a white racist rant and a belligerency and an almost of a fomenting of a civil war attitude that Omar and Cortez and this Palestinian woman who said, we're going to impeach the motherfucker, all of them lose all credentials and all respect. And it's
You're talking about, hold on, let me just correct you. That Palestinian woman, it was actually Representative Rashida Tlaib, and she is an elected member of the United States Congress. And I know you love America, and I know you love Congress. So she's not a Palestinian woman.
I know.
She is a Palestinian American who's also an elected official, and I think she deserves.
I'm not criticizing her on any of those points. You're right. What I'm criticizing is the political communication. The political communication has an isolating effect, and I just say that can be somewhat detrimental. If they want to get on this and say the FBI and the Trump administration cannot stop a group of Americans from going over and speaking at a conference, speaking truth, they can't do it. I welcome them. I welcome anyone that says that, because that's our constitutional rights. And for my part, I get the feeling that even though, like in the movie Braveheart, we don't have to defeat them, we just have to fight them. I get the feeling, even if I go into San Francisco Ninth Circuit court here and slap down a lawsuit that says Sigal Mandelker is a foreign agent, they're prohibiting us from going, they're threatening us with arrest for doing nothing but going over and speaking, and I want the court to rule. I think there's an advantage to throwing spears at them this way, and getting it out there in the legal process. I even though it may take time, I think it needs to happen. We can't let this be defined and fought on their ground. We can't let them fight this on their ground. We have to take the fight to them. That's my instinct. And Michael Maloof and I were talking about that, and Mike was in agreement. He said, we'll have to massage this and think about it, but I think we need to think about doing that, even though it's like you said, Michael Springmann, it's a hard case and all this. Well, that may be true, but there may be different ways to go in and just cite pressure. The other way is going directly to Trump. Look, let me say this and I'll end it. I want to go back to Phil Giraldi because he has some good things I think to say on a lot of this. This is about taking.
Yeah, he also said we shouldn't go off on our own personal tirade so much.
Yeah, and I don't want to. I don't want to.
I took that advice to heart. I know you.
I'm going to right now. I don't want. This is about taking this to Trump and having him do the right thing. He seems to be screwed up a lot of stuff. The Duran from RT, Alex Cristoforo and Macuris, if you listen to them, are pretty good. They said Trump has positioned himself to negotiate with Iran because he's given Netanyahu so much stuff. Netanyahu can't take that back. He can't say Trump is an enemy of Israel now. So Trump basically has silenced Netanyahu's criticisms, and he's in a position to negotiate with Iran. That's what we've done indirectly. We want to push Trump in the way of make a deal with Iran, negotiate with Iran. They're not a threat. They're not a threat to the American people. Neither is Russia. That's what I think we've been trying to do, is push him in that direction for the benefit of all the American people. And I'll stop talking there.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry I dropped out there. I had a phone call. I was trying to get rid of it, but I dropped out. That's why I wasn't leaving the discussion. Yeah. Let me check the participants, see who else is on the call. Kevin, we haven't heard from you in a while. Do you want to join in and give us any feedback? Are you still there in the trailer?
I'm still here in the trailer and listening to you over the sound of occasional roofing noises. But from what I'm hearing, I'm not sure that this is a civil disobedience action that I would want to take part in that I don't think that the upside of whatever they hit us with, it would necessarily be worth it. If there was some kind of tipping point available where what we do now by committing civil disobedience actually could get the ball rolling into the mainstream or into some forum where people are going to be learning about these things that don't already know it, then I would certainly be interested in, even following Scott's brave path into a couple of years of prison. But since people who read VT and UN's review and so on already pretty much know these things, simply getting some coverage there isn't really worth having all the hassle and being shut down and forced to put our energy into fighting this kind of thing when we could be doing other things. So my thought is unless we have a really solid plan for how we're going to leverage a civil disobedience action into actually accomplishing something, my thought is to definitely not be taking money from New Horizon, maybe go to Beirut without taking any money from New Horizon. That would be defensible. So that's my thought on the strategy of whether or not to be doing civil disobedience.
I agree with Kevin completely. I think that the whole idea of turning this into a civil issue that we're going to get promoted in the media is a bit of a fiction, because the media is not going to listen to this. I also believe that going through the courts, the government is going to be able to pull all kinds of tricks to stop this from proceeding. So I see these as long-term possibilities, but not as a strategy, which brings me back again to what are we going to do in September? My my thinking on this now is that it serves no purpose if all of us go to jail. In fact, it might be completely destructive on our lives as we know them. So I think it's a bad idea. I think what we should be finding out from the New Horizon organizers is very, very specific information on who is funding this, where the money's coming from, where the money is going to pay for what. So we have ourselves completely documented in terms of every detail of this trip and are able to show that it had nothing to do with anything coming from New Horizons or any other organization that is sanctioned currently. That would be my suggestion, because I think we have to be serious about a short-term strategy if we want this thing in Beirut to happen.
Well, what is your short-term strategy? What are you suggesting that we should do to make Beirut happen for ourselves?
And what I just said, basically, we have to get a document everything. We have to document everything in advance before we go. We have to find out where the money is coming to pay for the hotel, where the money is coming to pay for the airplane, where the money is coming for every single aspect of this conference. And if we're satisfied that we can fully document it, then we protect ourselves from the FBI and from OPA.
No, that's cool, Phil. We have
I think you muted yourself, Sander, because it says Michael Springmann is the host, which I don't mind. Sing us a song, Michael Springmann.
Go, Michael, go.
All right. Well, I'm not the host, but I'll tell you, I think the money is coming from the religious organizations in Iran, the shrine to the 8th Imam of Shiism. But it's my understanding, though, that participating in the conference, even if you go and pay your own way, you're still subject to reprisal because you're dealing with sanctioned individuals and organizations.
I don't think that's illegal. I think what is illegal, if you read what sanctions imply, it is pretty clear that it's taking some material benefit or giving some material benefit. And I'm sorry, guys, but all of us just sitting there and speaking is not giving anyone material benefit. So I think we're kind of safe on that. But this is maybe something where over the next 6 weeks or so, we get some more serious opinion on what might be entailed here. But I think it's as I read it, it's a material issue that the sanctions are involved with. And if we're not taking anything or giving anything that's material but's quantifiable, I think we're okay.
But they
guys,
guys,
stop. Wait, I'm sorry. The reason I keep on dropping out because I'm trying to juggle too much here. The Iranians want us to switch over to Skype. Is everybody willing to do that? Are you guys? Do we have time to do this?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Scott, Phil?
I really can't. I've got to be somewhere else at 2 o'clock, and it's 1 o'clock already.
Can you give us like 10 minutes?
I can get 10 minutes, but no more than that.
Great. No problem, Phil. Okay. I'm going to send you all a Skype link right away. I'm sorry about the.
All right, gentlemen, I'll see you on the other side. And Phil, I agree with you. We need to document all that stuff, and I think we're all on the same page. But
yeah, I don't think we should just be told, hey, it's a foundation in Iran. We need a whole lot more detail than that. I was told at one point it was 3 different foundations.
Yeah.
So, you know, we need to know in specific detail exactly what is on the table here.
Yeah, because we can't be captured and put into jail. It destroys all of our ability to be more effective in so many different ways over the next few years. So we can't afford to be taken out.
Right.
Phil, have you talked to Maloof about some of this stuff?
I'm having lunch with him tomorrow.
Okay, good.
I have spoken to him with him on the phone and also at the Russian National Day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to talk in greater detail with him tomorrow, and I will convey whatever we come up with at the end of this.
Yeah.
He's keen on going.
I know, so am I. I am too. But we like you said, we need to get all this ironed out. And I think at the minimum, there needs to be clear documents that we have that show we're not taking money or getting a benefit from any sanctioned individuals or organizations.
But the New Horizon Conference is connected to the Iran Revolutionary Guards Corps, which has been sanctioned as a terrorist organization.
Yeah, but if we're not getting money from the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, then we're okay. No, I mean, you know, as I say, we've heard that there will be foundations that are funding this that are not being sanctioned. We need, you know, absolute ironclad confirmation that that's the case.
Yeah.
What these foundations are. It probably would help to know what banks they operate through, too.
Yeah. They have to, and most likely they've got to be outside, you know, of Iran, like, you know, the Africa Group of Peace, or, you know, the Scandinavian Peace Alliance, or who knows what, but it's got to be from groups that are not in any way can be connected with the, I think, the geography of Iran or the persons of Iran. That's the safest way, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, the more I think about it, that Rand Paul connection would be probably a very key thing to advance, Phil.
Yeah, well, as I say, I have a connection through Ron with the people in his office. So it shouldn't be, if we can come up with a cogent argument, well-focused, I have a feeling he would be receptive.
Maybe Ron would like to do a show with you on this sort of a subject, because there's a powerful case to be made of taking seasoned diplomats, CIA, Pentagon, military, people who love the country, taking seasoned people with the right minds and sending them to be unofficial ambassadors. It seems like something Ron Paul would like to talk about on his show.
They're having, the Ron Paul Institute is having a foreign policy conference. It might be
All right, I think we're going to jump on the Skype call.
Sorry.
Okay. Okay, good enough. We'll have your voice. We'll have your voice. Done. Sander, can you add everyone?
Yeah, I'm adding Scott, I'm adding Phil. Yeah.
Okay. Dan is er Fidel is er
And Hamid Ashbari.
Yes, yes.
We're waiting for Sander Hicks to add up this. Scott Bennett and
Okay, sorry. This is the Zoom call, right?
سلام سلام.